What's up, everybody? It is Thursday. Almost said it was Friday, but not yet. Hold on to your butts because we got 2 hours of GoJo and Golic coming your way. We are going to start off with an Orange Bowl preview. It's Notre Dame versus everybody on the internet, apparently. We will jump into that. Plus, we had a great Cavs-Thunder game last night. Cavs kept their win streak alive. We'll break that all down for you. Plus, Wemby is having another historic year. We will break it down. We got basketball, we got guests, we got football. We have it all coming your way right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here with you guys. Got a fun show coming up today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network. DIANNA Russini, ESPN, God, old habits die hard. The Athletic Senior NFL Insider going to join us in hour number 2. To go over plenty of what we saw going on around yesterday between Ben Johnson, a little flirtation in the NFL with Bill Belichick, and plenty of other good nuggets there. And Richard Johnson, co-host of Split Zone Duo, phenomenal college football podcast, also does a great job over at CBS Sports. He is down in Miami, the site of the Orange Bowl, where Notre Dame and Penn State are going to kick off tonight at 7:30 Eastern, Dad. And, man, you know what I forget about this time of year? I was telling someone the other day, the thing I remember most from the national title run in 2012, Dad, was how quiet it gets around you as the team, because the rest of the sport has gone to bed, right? We've done all the other bowl games here. We're through all the other action. So you're the only show in town for Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Penn State. You're the ones everyone's going to for their content right now. And what happens when you've got time and a lack of inventory is it feels like people get bored, because while we're excited for today and we got plenty of stuff with the game that we're going to talk about, man, it seems like the rest of the college football world woke up and just decided to do we like Notre Dame and agree with them being in a conference or not being in a conference or not yesterday here. It's amazing how often when we get bored, people just hit that button like it's the LeBron Jordan debate of college football.
And I'm surprised people are getting bored, because we've had a game for the first round to the championship game. It's 4 games. It's not like when there were 4 teams in the playoffs and there was the 44-day layoff that you guys had before you played Alabama, you know, and there were just the other bowl games in between. That's when you think there would be boredom and start to be talk of other things, not when there's a game every week or basically week and a half, since there's midweek games there were last week. In a playoff run. I'm with you. I mean, it should just be, it's kind of like, you know, the regular season in the NFL or college, where there's a game every week that you're preparing for. And instead of talking about what's going on the field, it's the same old low-hanging fruit, Notre Dame, join a conference, blah, blah, blah.
I will say, everyone who wanted to talk about this or was looking for an excuse got a little help, because one of the things and reasons this did come up was yesterday at the podium. Both head coaches of these teams, Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, James Franklin at Penn State, took to the podium and were asked some questions. And one of the questions that Penn State's head coach James Franklin was asked was about, the things college football needed going forward in this new super conference area. And one of the things he talked about was more uniformity across the sport, and it led to this statement from James Franklin.
I think it should be consistent across college football. I think, again, this is no knock at Coach or Notre Dame, but I think everybody should be in a conference. I think everybody should play a conference championship game, or no one should play a conference championship game. I think everybody should play the same number of conference games. I was a head coach in the SEC. I've been a head coach in the Big Ten. I was in the SEC when the whole conversation was whether to go to 8 or 9 conference games. We voted, all the coaches voted against going to 9 games. The commissioner agreed and kept it at 8. I think it was one of the better decisions as SEC made. The Big Ten went to 9 games. I was not a math major at East Stroudsburg, but just the numbers are going to make things more challenging if you're playing one more conference game.
Now, I applaud Marcus Freeman for managing to keep his face completely devoid of emotion as James Franklin went back to the well on that one. And, Dad, I will say James Franklin's larger point about the need for uniformity in college football now more than ever, when he referenced the amount of conference games played and some of these things with the schedule, I actually understand. It's the most difficult part about picking the championship field for this sport relative to the NFL that's got a rubric, a system, all these defined things, because the amount of teams you have are smaller, they're closer together in talent and skill, all these things that make it a lot easier and that have made college football hard. You're trying to grade schedules and resumes across vastly different bodies of the sport, and that hasn't gotten any easier in the super conference era. So I understand the sentiment there, even before he goes to the, everyone should play in a conference championship game or not and all that stuff, which led everyone back to their own worst devices in this conversation, because that's the only thing that people were going to care about in that sign bout. And James Franklin had to know that up there. So I don't know. It feels tired, especially in the current college football playoff field, because lest we remind people, Notre Dame is one of 3 teams in the college football playoff field that did not play in a conference championship game this year. So this is not novel for them, and now after winning 2 games as a part of this field here, does feel sort of silly that we're even having this going into this point. But again, that's the origin story right there, Dad. So I don't know, is this something, Dad? Because I was surprised in the last couple of days. Ralph Russo writes the article about how Notre Dame's more likable now here. I don't feel like anything has changed. I feel like the minute you get Notre Dame back into the limelight and people have enough time, there's always going to be someone that pulls this rabbit out of the hat.
Well, 2 things. What James Franklin said about uniformity, I understand you would like uniformity, but with 130 teams in FBS and different, in Power 4 was Power 5, now Power 4, Group of 5, you're never going to get uniformity. You could get uniformity in the same amount of conference games that you played. Say the SEC went to 9, like the Big Ten, to make it equal. There would still be, you'll still find something to complain about. Then it'll be, well, the SEC schedule is harder. The Lane Kiffin tweets all over the place, which really took a nosedive when Tennessee got smoked by Ohio State. You're never going to get uniformity. The coaches and administrations will always complain about something, and that would be the schedule strength that they would complain about. As far as Notre Dame, it is just and first, when I heard James Franklin say, sitting right next to Marcus, say no disrespect to Notre Dame, me and your mother are like, well, then who the hell you disrespecting? I mean, it's like, well, I don't feel this way, but, and then you go ahead and talk about how you feel this way. But I will say, James Franklin talked about the committee. When he talked about how do you put these people that are in that room to make a really important decision that impacts the landscape of college football, and they can't compare apples to apples or oranges to oranges. So my point is, and for every Notre Dame hater out there, I'll scream it again as you grab the low-hanging fruit. It's not Notre Dame's fault. They are not part of the 13-person committee. They have not made up the rules of inclusion in the playoffs. They did not hold a gun to anybody's head. Jack Swarbrick was put on the committee along with the conferences, and you always hear, and Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick, in this case, Pete Bavacqua now. Notre Dame didn't put themselves on anything. Notre Dame was included. If you have a problem, talk to the presidents and the administrations that vote for these things. Talk to the 13-person committee that James Franklin is addressing here of comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I would just love everybody to take a breath and just think to yourself, if my school was independent for as long as Notre Dame was, just flip-flop your school and Notre Dame, and you're sitting here now, would you be saying, oh, we should join a conference to help everybody out? We should be in a conference? No, you would not. You would not. You would say the same thing I'm saying. They're making rules that put us in, that benefit us. It's not Notre Dame's fault. Again, they're not holding a gun to anybody's head. Any team that was in Notre Dame's position would take this position and would keep this position as long as they can. And that's what Notre Dame will do. And that's what Notre Dame should do. Because, listen, we all base this around money, right? No matter how much you want to talk, money, it's money. $14 million. You know who's Notre Dame is splitting it with? Nobody. And that's a big thing. And if your school was independent, you would be saying the same thing. So and Notre Dame is willing to go to a conference if it needs to. And basically by that is the money split and the ability to get into the playoffs. And right now, it's easier to get into the playoffs. If the rules change where it's more beneficial to be in a conference, they'll join a conference. But just everybody who just spits venom at Notre Dame, stop for a minute, put your school in Notre Dame's place for the decades and decades it's been independent. You would remain independent. Don't lie to yourself. You know you would.
Yeah, it's tired. It's all really tired. Relitigating this is so stupid and pisses me off because we're just rehashing arguments. That's why I said it's the LeBron Jordan debate of college football, and that it doesn't change over time, but we still get this. Paul Feinbaum yesterday. I love Paul Feinbaum, but him going on First Take, which is the irony of this take coming up on First Take, the number one generalist sports talk show in the game, that Notre Dame, when they were asked about would Notre Dame's championship be good for college football, and this is what Paul has to say. The irony is just overwhelming.
What I don't like about Notre Dame is the arrogance that Notre Dame football is too good for everyone else. By the way, Stephen, you know where Notre Dame is in basketball? You know where they are in all the other sports? They're in the ACC. And guess what happened during COVID, doggy? When Notre Dame was out in the cold with nowhere to go, the ACC let them into the league for 1 year, and they played in the championship game, and they got in the playoffs. So that really rubbed me the wrong way. Then when the ACC said, hey, Notre Dame, you want to play football in the ACC? They already play 5 conference games a year. That's mandated by their agreement. They said, no, we're good. That's what I don't like.
Oh, Paul.
I mean, again, like, I love Paul Feinbaum. I understand what Paul's here to do. Like, I get all that stuff. But, man, I mean, the pot calling the kettle there with the foremost proponent for the Southeastern Conference calling anyone else arrogant is sort of rich. And, listen, I get it. Some portions of our fan base earn that. I understand what comes with the territory. Like,
yes.
It's not, none of this is a monolith here. But, again, you stated it correctly, and we don't need to beat it into the ground. But if your team could, you would. And at this point, I understand that's kind of difficult for a million reasons in college football, but if your team could have done this and they would have done this, then you would have loved it. But because it's not your team and people don't like anyone being different, even in a sport where everyone is different, and we went through everything we did having the debate about the 12th and 11th teams in the college football playoff field, because all of this is so different across the sport, from Group of 5 to Power 4, among the different Power 4s that aren't the Big Ten and the SEC, and Notre Dame is just another one of them. For people that want to talk about the schedule, if Notre Dame had lost 2 games in the regular season with this year's schedule, they would not have been in the dance. Full stop. A bunch of teams that lost in their conference championship game got the benefit of that and still got to play football in the expanded postseason. full stop. And then Notre Dame went and beat 2 of them. And so I don't know what we're doing here anymore except getting ready to play a game. And again, people have too much time. People have apparently gotten bored just talking about the football of it all. And so we break glass of a case of emergency. And this is where we come. And Dad, we'll get into a lot of this with Richard Johnson off the second hour. But how are you feeling? Day of the game here. Like, I know I am a ball of nerves right now. I wear this much more than you guys here. But after Notre Dame, Dad, does it feel different after the Notre Dame win over Georgia in the Sugar Bowl? Because I think for a lot of people in the fan base, that was the monkey lifted off their back in a way that I think Penn State may still be waiting for. Hey, James Franklin getting that big game moniker labeled on him. I don't know if that peels off after SMU and after Boise State the way it would after a win against Notre Dame.
Well, that's exactly right. And Notre Dame hasn't won a big game in a long time until the Georgia game. And I know the Notre Dame haters will be, well, it wasn't the Georgia that everybody knows. Yes, I know, but it was still a Georgia team that was in the playoffs, and Notre Dame beat them. You can only play who you play. Because I agree, James Franklin still has the moniker on him, beating SMU and Boise State. While they won both games and went to the semis, do you think that it is suddenly lifted from his shoulders, the big game winnability? No. So he's living in the same thing Notre Dame is. These are 2 teams. Notre Dame's last title was 88. You know whose was further back? Penn State's. Penn State's was 86. Yeah. So these 2 teams have been waiting a long time. Notre Dame would get near the top and then go down, near the top and go down. Penn State could never really get near the top. They were held back by Ohio State and Michigan, and James Franklin not being able to beat a top team. Well, now Notre Dame has beaten a top team in Georgia, and Penn State can get that by beating Notre Dame. It'll be amazing that all of a sudden Notre Dame will be a great opponent if Penn State beats them, right? Penn State beat them. Whoa, they beat a blue blood. They beat a great opponent. But if Notre Dame wins, there'll be another excuse. I digress. I just get tired of it. But this is going to be a rock fight. This is going to be these are 2, by the way, all 4 defenses in this, and from a former defensive guy, I love this. Yards per game, Ohio State is number 1 in the country. Texas is 3. Penn State is 6. Notre Dame is 8. So you have all 4 teams in the top 10. Points given up during the year by the defense. Ohio State's number 1. Notre Dame's number 2. Texas is number 4. Penn State is number 7. These are great defenses. You know, we know about the explosive offense of Ohio State, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But there's really no explosiveness to the offenses of Penn State and Notre Dame if you just go look at their stats of 30-yard catches, 40-yard catches. Not really. There's not really much there. So you wonder if a big play by either team really kind of sets the tone.
I will say, Dad, not in the passing offenses for either team. Penn State is struggled mightily in that the same way Notre Dame has here. Their run game, when you look at Penn State, in terms of percentage of their plays that go for explosives, they're 6th in college football, and a lot of that comes from Nick Singleton, Kaytron Allen, and that Penn State rushing attack there. Notre Dame's defense, 6th in college football in percentage of explosive plays allowed on defense. So that's one of the areas, along with the red zone, where when you look at these 2 teams, Dad, similar profiles across the board. Great defenses that, especially in the playoff, have turned the ball over and allowed their offenses to have an easier time here. Offenses led by a rushing attack with flawed but talented quarterbacks. The difference is Penn State's a better passing offense and a better red zone offense than Notre Dame, who is bad on both parts of those. And so that's going to be the area where Notre Dame's defense has the biggest challenge to keep going and finding a way to pry the ball out of opponents' hands.
Yeah, I should have specified passing because the stats are awful. Penn State on 30-yard passes downfield is 86 in the country. 40-yard passes down completions, 108th. Notre Dame is 130th and 126th in those. But Penn State has Tyler Warren. He is a big play tight end. Notre Dame spreads the ball around. Jordan Faison, the lacrosse football player, has been the leading receiver in both games. So they don't hit it big on the passing game. So, but if one of them did, that could certainly be a difference in what is being termed a rock fight, and maybe first one to 17 or 20 wins, and field goals will be very, very important in these games.
Yeah, Notre Dame getting a big boost from their field goal kicker in the last game, finally healthy after a season dealing with a groin injury. The Irish currently a 1.5-point favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook. 45.5 is that over-under. Coming up next, we will give you one of the biggest keys to the game that still hangs in the balance and take a look at some news from the NFL next. Pressure is the word for the NFL playoffs here. It's the obvious choice, but there's one player in particular who it's time, finally, for us to see the big thing happen in the postseason. We'll tell you who that is in a second here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield hanging around. We got through all of the Notre Dame buzzwords in the lead up to this game in the first segment there. Our response to the Paul Feinbaums and the Danny Cannells and even the James Franklins of the world who all want to have something to say about Notre Dame in the conference. Let me just say this, Dad. The likability stuff that all came up, I don't care if you like Notre Dame or not. I'm really good. Like, it's fun that more people like it because they like Marcus Freeman and they think Notre Dame's actually legitimately supposed to be here now. I don't care if you like us. Whatever you feel about us, great. That's fine here. We won 2 games in this thing now, so let's put the rest of that to bed and actually focus on the game that's going on here. And y'all can save this for the offseason, and if we eventually lose in this thing, then I'm sure you'll renew all these same arguments and yada yada. But in the meantime, Dad, we mentioned Notre Dame 1.5-point favorites in this game, and I think one of the big things we'll both be paying attention to is what Abdul Carter looks like in this game. Star Penn State defensive end went out in the second quarter against Boise State, and it sounds like he's going to play. And, Dad, you'd imagine, hey, listen, it's one of the last potentially 2 games of the season before he turns pro. This guy, while he's, I'm sure, going to be mindful of the fact that he's going to be a millionaire come this spring, also really wants to be on the field to try and give his team an opportunity to go and win a national championship, but how he looks in the process, because this is a Penn State defense, Dad, that coordinated by Tom Allen doesn't do as much in terms of the blitz packages and the exotics that Al Golden does on the other side. A lot of it's based off, hey, we got really good players on this front four led by Abdul Carter that are going to go back and make life difficult. And if he is hampered at all in here, that's stock up for the Notre Dame offensive tackles and Anthony Knapp and Will Wagner, who are going to have to contend with that.
Oh, without a doubt, that would be stock up for the Notre Dame O-line to not have this terror. 63 tackles, 21.5 tackles for loss, 11 sacks, and he's obviously a high first rounder when he switched from linebacker to edge rusher. Kind of like Micah Parsons now was a linebacker in the NFL, obviously, but has moved more to edge rusher, and the damage he is doing there. So it was a left shoulder, left arm injury, I believe. And he went out in the second quarter and got treated and tried to come back, but really couldn't. And I don't know if it was a matter of if they needed him back, if it was a close game, but this again, they controlled this game. So if they just held them out, I don't know. But I don't think there's any doubt he's going to line up and play in this game and do as much as he can do, which he may be back to full strength, or nobody's full strength right now, as close to full strength as you can get, and be able to put on a dominant performance, or it may prove to come back and bite him. We don't know, but he's going to play. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Just like Price, the running back for Notre Dame, who hurt his knee in the last game or 2 games ago. Was it Indiana where he tweaked
Jeremiah
it?
Love. Jeremiah
Love. Yeah.
Jeremiah Love injured his knee against USC, was playing sick and with that aggravated a bit against Indiana when he had the 98-yard touchdown run, and then aggravated a little bit again against Georgia. Now, he says he's good to go for this game, but it'll be interesting to see how Notre Dame manages his pitch count and how Penn State chooses to defend an offense where Riley Leonard's legs were the best weapon in the Georgia game and what allowed them to win that one. Jadarian Price, the other running back in there, a guy who also has been explosive this year, is under 1,000 yards, and we know for the other side, the sell for Penn State, 2,000-yard rushers this season. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, the first duo in Penn State history to both go over 1,000 yards in the same season. The only running back duo in college football to do that this year. So potent stuff on both sides in the backfield here. So, Dad, I guess picks-wise, who do you like in this game? What do you expect to be the outcome, and what's the key?
Well, I do expect it to be a low-scoring game, and I think everybody does, which watch, it'll turn into this high-scoring, shootout affair, which I just don't see happening. I think this is a line of, like most games, but again, you have high-scoring affairs. This is controlled by the line of scrimmage. I think in a game like this, big plays, whether a big hitting offensive play, a big turnover. By the way, Notre Dame leads the nation in turnovers with 33. Getting that turnover and the extra possessions are at a premium here. Getting a turnover and getting the extra possession, getting a big play situation, getting a big offensive play, a big defensive play, a big special team play like Notre Dame's kickoff return for a touchdown, getting a big special team play. This is one of those where it's just a back and forth, and does a big play give the edge to one team and make the other team have to catch up. I still like Notre Dame in this game, but I think it's a easy one-score game, a 20-17 game. I don't see it going much higher than that with these two defenses, which are just excellent defenses, and two teams that like to run the ball, even though Penn State does have a hell of a receiver in their tight end, Tyler Warren. So I go Notre Dame 2017 over Penn State.
Yeah, I'm most curious to see who matches up with Tyler Warren. Is it a Don Schuler? Is it Jack Kaiser at linebacker? Does Jordan Clark, who's been the nickelback for Notre Dame this year, come in as they treat him more like a marquee receiver than necessarily just a blocking body at tight end? But either way, I do think Notre Dame matches up well with their biggest strength, and I think Notre Dame wins this game. I like Notre Dame given the points. I like the under in this game the way that you mentioned there. I think Notre Dame's defense has been playing at such a high level through these first couple of games, and this going to be a step up in the quality of competition for Penn State after the first two games, just in terms of the bodies on the other side being thrown at them, looking a little bit more like their own. And so I think all that coming together, that passing defense continuing to stifle Penn State's downfield passing offense that struggled against better competition. I think they limit big plays. I think they can turn the ball over again in this game. And I think Notre Dame finds a way to get back to a national championship for the first time since I played one in 2012. So I am very excited for the opportunity coming up here, Jesse. And I am also very worried about the possibility. And that's why I never go out in public for these games, because I cannot be seen around other people acting the way I act.
That's what I was going to say, is how are you watching this game? What kind of snacks are you going to have by your side? So, GoJo, it sounds like you have to be in the privacy of your own home.
Yeah, I don't leave. I told you guys this last time. I'm a crazy person with these games, and so I don't want other people to see me. I watched a Notre Dame game with a bunch of people I worked with in 2016 when they played Texas, and I told them in the third quarter of that game, it was a new show I was getting ready to work on. I just met everyone. We had a great dinner at our producer Barron's house, and I said, I love y'all, but I don't know you well enough yet for you to see me the way I am in the fourth quarter of this game. And so I left and broke a hotel remote in the room when Notre Dame lost to Texas in double overtime, and the rest is history. So, yeah, that's why I stay home and mind my business now. Dad, you and Mom just stay home because you like staying home.
Yeah, we just stay home because we like staying home. It's exactly right. Jesse, Mike is the only one in our family who needs to be alone. Any of other one of us could be out watching the game somewhere. We don't. Wow, we love Notre Dame and want them to win. The family group text when Notre Dame is losing with Mike chiming in is gold.
It's dark.
Is just his highs and lows are unbelievable. That it's like he is still playing. It is something. So we will just be on our couch watching, but Mike has to be alone. Mike would lose friends if he were in public.
Do we have any special snacks for this? Some people have like a special, like, oh, we're gonna watch the game, we have to have the 7-layer dip or like whatever.
No, I'd love a 7-layer
It's all
dip.
secondary. I'm about the ball. This isn't like some Super Bowl party where people are worried about the feelings of others or any sort of need. I have no needs during this game. My body shuts down. It does not produce waste. It barely takes things in, and if I do, I'm not conscious of it there. I sit and I mainline this football game in a way that is deeply, deeply unhealthy.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It is. We best move on, Jesse. We best move on because it's getting closer and closer.
Well, obviously, all of our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in LA with these crazy wildfires that are raging on. So with that in mind, the NFL is keeping an eye on the situation at hand. Obviously, the Rams-Vikings game is set to be played in LA on Monday. They're saying they're going to play it by ear. There is a contingency plan to move the game to Arizona if the need arises. Obviously, we're all hoping that there's enough containment by that point that that's not necessary. But, I mean, GoJo, you're in LA, and it's not good right now. And a new fire broke out yesterday in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah, it's been really chaotic here, to say the least. And again, your thoughts and prayers are with everybody who's been evacuated, who's lost their homes now and had their lives affected in a way that is going to be difficult for a lot of people to recover from. Now, thankfully, you're still not dealing with massive loss of life at this point, and a lot of people have been able to get to safety. But it's been a process, and dealing with these winds, and now finally getting to a place where the emergency response people and the firefighters can actually go out and fight some of these fires as they're popping up. So, Dad, I was a little surprised, quite honestly, that they were going to try and continue to play this game business as usual, just because, as in most cases where emergency response is involved, a lot of times these games being moved, these games being shifted, the time window is a lot more about trying to keep people off the road at a time where emergency response crews need to get where they are, being able to devote resources elsewhere when you've also got to have game security and the things that go along with that. And so I guess everyone involved optimistic that by that time on Monday, this will all be behind us. And at the very least, we will be in the recovery portion of this and not still actively fighting what's going on here. And so they'll feel more comfortable devoting there to that. And that's before you get to, the air quality, the other things that have suffered in the meantime since this has been going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not what is it like around SoFi. It's all those things you mentioned, taking resources away. Thousands, tens of thousands of people being displaced. I mean, quite honestly, who's gonna care about a game I mean, it's going to be an interesting scenario. And again, the game is obviously second, third, fourth, fifth on the list to what's going on to try and get those fires in control. But this is a big-time sporting event that will go on, and there is precedent. And unfortunately, it was with the wildfires in 2003, where a Monday night regular season game between Miami and the San Diego Chargers was moved to Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe. And that's where the NFL would move, not to Sun Devil Stadium, they would move it to the Cardinal Stadium in Glendale, is where they would move this playoff game if, in fact, they're going to move it. They're going to wait and try and make the decision as late as they can. But also, you have to also give the team, again, from a sports, I'm putting the sports hat on right now, you have to give the teams time to change the plans, to go to Arizona, to play this game. So it's definitely a dicey situation while taking into consideration the full effect of what truly should be on everybody's hearts and minds is getting the fires contained, getting the people who are displaced hopefully placed somewhere. I know it's not going to happen in 3 days. Obviously, it's just, you see pictures. You're out there, Mike. We're not. We just see pictures. It's just, and video. It's absolutely brutal what's going on there.
Yeah, where I am in the South Bay is largely insulated from a lot of this just because there's so much space and concrete that separates us from the area where this all started in the Pacific Palisades, where there's a lot of greenery around the mountains. And when these winds hit the right way, as everyone's seen and been told, unfortunately, this is something that becomes possible with as dry as it's been out here. But waking up yesterday in the morning and seeing an orange clouded sky, waking up and seeing ash on the hood of my car that's come all the way down from where these fires are going on is just a sobering reminder. And Dad, from the sports standpoint here, I mean, you're talking about a Rams team potentially hosting this game who also has families, who also lives in this area, right, and is, I'm sure, worrying about what's going on with their family, worrying about what's going on with their kids' schools if they're affected in any of these areas here, trying to go and to your point, compartmentalize and prepare for what in their world is a very important football game and a playoff opportunity in the National Football League while balancing what's going on in your real life. It's where we always point out that NFL players, while they certainly have means that so many people don't that make certain problems easier to deal with, they are still human beings in a community, and the things that happen around them still have an impact. And so for that Rams team and for Sean McVay, that is the balance of, hey, trying to be good community members if you've got the opportunities, taking care of your families who are also dealing with this situation depending on where you live and are located, but also trying to be aware of what you're going to do for this upcoming game and trying to be as prepared as you possibly can. So again, hopefully by that point, all of this is behind us. The brave men and women of the fire departments out here who are fighting these flames and are doing everything they can to get people to safety. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Cannot thank you enough for the bravery and for the things that you are doing to try and provide safety to everybody else here. Coming up next, we will get to more sports, what we saw in the NBA, a playoff and a finals preview last night, and a look ahead at the person under most pressure in the NFL postseason.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you. Guys, let's talk some NBA really quick here, okay? So we had a huge matchup between the Thunder and Cavaliers last night, and it did not disappoint. Going into this, both teams on win streaks. The Thunder, 15-game win streak. Cavs riding their own 10-game win streak. Cleveland kept their streak alive, okay? What did you guys take away from this Cavs thin win here?
Yeah, I mean, if this is truly a preview of what could be the NBA Finals, I think we're all in really good hands, right? Whether or not people actually be excited about that, if the lack of buzz around this was more of an NBA regular season problem that we've seen sort of consistent for years now, that's fine. But, Dad, when you look at this game that your Cleveland Cavaliers went out and got the win in at home,
yes,
30 lead changes, 8 ties, the first 2 teams this season to both score 40 points each in a quarter. That was the third quarter of this game. The Cavs had 7 players in double figures in this game. That was only the third matchup, to Jesse's point, in NBA history with teams riding double-digit win streaks here. The Cavs are now 32-4, the best record in the NBA, and 11-0 against the Western Conference. So it was as exciting a basketball game as you could have humanly asked for between 2 very similar teams, Dad. 2 teams that have stars in their respective sides, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Donovan Mitchell for the Cleveland Cavaliers, that have compelling bigs in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen on the Cleveland side here. Isaiah Hartenstein, we know Chet Holmgren not available on Oklahoma City side, but you could just see how well it matches up across the board. And so to see something deliver like that, that's what the NBA needs in the regular season, in a sea of games where we're searching for stars who are actually playing, things that we can actually sink our teeth into. These 2 teams are accomplishing at a really high level and came together and put that on wax. I mean, hell, they interviewed the coach, one of the coaches in the middle, going into the fourth quarter, and he even stopped to say, man, I wish I could just sit and watch this game instead of actually coaching.
Yeah, it lived up, right? For a team with a 15-game winning streak and a team with a then 10-game winning streak, now 11. For the Cavs, who are, 32-4, there's only been 4 teams that have posted a better record through 36 games. And Golden State's the closest one in 2015. They were 34-2. Then you go to the 66 Philadelphia 76ers, the 71 Lakers, and the 95 Bulls are the only teams that had a better record after 36 games. It was, and what a, for a game, you mentioned all the lead changes and the ties. The moment in the game was certainly when Cleveland was up 3, 125-122. Oklahoma City had the ball, missed a shot. Donovan Mitchell got called for an over-the-back loose ball foul, which would have given the ball back to Oklahoma City down 3 with 1:19 to go. Donovan immediately did the swirling finger, like, replay this thing. I didn't touch him. And it turns out they replayed it, and he didn't touch him. The call was reversed. Evan Mobley then scores for Cleveland. So instead of Oklahoma City with the ball 125-122 down 3, they lose possession, and Cleveland scores to go up 127-122, eventually win it 129-122. That was a key moment of the game where replay actually helped Cleveland, but rightfully so, because it was obviously a missed call. But you just got to love when a regular season game lives up.
Yeah, Dad, do you think that these 2 teams being good, we hear this all the time, but the runs that they're on, will this draw more people back in? Should more people be paying attention? And why aren't they when it comes to a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers and what they've done this season? Come in and so far been the best team in a conference that includes the defending champion Boston Celtics.
You know, and it seems like everybody points to Oklahoma City. Well, they can certainly make it to the finals, but nobody, not nobody, but people still saying, well, the Cavs have to go through the Celtics, and they do. I get it. Cleveland's 32-4. Boston is 27-10. They're 5.5 games out, but Boston's still the defending champs and has a great team. So everybody's saying, oh, is this a preview of the finals? It could be. But Cleveland still has to go through the defending NBA champs. And I don't know why ratings are down. Is it the 3-point? Is it everybody hoisting up 3 points, which takes away from the beauty and the movement of the game, even though there's movement outside the 3-point line to get 3-point shots? I don't know. And, it's not like Oklahoma City and Cleveland are going to play 30 times, to get this matchup. So I don't know why ratings are so down. Obviously, I believe it has to do with the 3-point shot and just the sheer volume that teams are taking with it.
I actually don't think it's that. I just think that people have short attention spans now and that we don't get games like this that often, it feels like. And because we've all lionized postseason performance the way that we have, we end up devaluing that. The same way people worried about that in college football, but we have scarcity and violence in that sport to help us out with that. There's no scarcity and there's no violence in basketball, and so it's harder to feel stakes attached to these games, which is why the in-season tournaments work so well. It's my hope that this continues to serve as proof of concept that we get to know these teams. We're still in the getting to know you phase with Oklahoma City after last year when they burst onto the scene in such a big way. And now this season started to get proof of concept. The Cleveland Cavaliers accomplishing at this level. We're getting to know you after last year and what they were able to do, and now taking that jump this year. You've got to build up some brand equity, I think, with a lot of the average fan in order to really have it resonate in that same way. The irony, by the way, of me talking about lionizing the postseason to the detriment of the regular season, as I turn around now, Dad, and get ready to ask you, as we look ahead to the NFL postseason that we're getting ready to talk about here, that is nigh this weekend, as we will get Super Wildcard Weekend going here, and ask you the most sports talky question I can possibly muster. Who is under the most pressure heading into this NFL postseason? Who do you think it is?
I would say, from a player standpoint, it would be Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, you talk about winning the MVPs, and I think he's going to win his third. There are 6 quarterbacks that have won at least 3 MVPs, and they all have at least one Super Bowl championship to go with it. And Lamar has struggled in the playoffs. He's been great in the regular season, and he's struggled in the playoffs. So I think for him, and every team can put on, except really for Kansas City, the pressure that they're under by finishing off the regular season and the postseason. But I think from a player standpoint, it's Lamar Jackson. He's proven he's the best player in the regular season, but can't. And again, praise goes to the quarterback, negativity goes to the quarterback. Probably too much, but maybe not enough in Lamar's situation. So I think for him to finally get over the hump, and what a hump it's going to be. You have to get past Kansas City, right? Well, first you have to get to Kansas City, then you have to get past Kansas City. You had a chance last year with Kansas City at your place, and you didn't get it done.
Yeah.
But now, you're stronger in the backfield with Derrick Henry, obviously Lamar Jackson. Zay Flowers probably going to miss this game against Pittsburgh, but I don't think they need him to beat Pittsburgh. But Zay, if maybe he will play in this game, we still don't know. It's day to day, but I would lean toward the probably not going to play this game, but he should be ready to go the rest of the playoffs. So you could say the team Baltimore, but the player, I would say Lamar, of capping off these MVPs, of which he's going to win his third this year, I believe, to put a Super Bowl victory, not just in the Super Bowl, but a Super Bowl victory behind it.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why, Dad. It's Lamar Jackson's own gross level of accomplishment that now leads us to this point, because what else is there left for him to do? To win 3 MVPs before you're 30 and to cap it off with this one, arguably the most impressive passing season and statistical season overall that Lamar Jackson has had, which is saying something, now leaves us to, all right, yeah, when you're a player of that caliber, it's okay to expect you to be able to lead your team through the postseason and be a reason why they are overcoming a lot of that. It's not something that I think we're lumping on that's all that unfair. Again, given his level of accomplishment and what we've seen him do in affecting a football team, and Dad on the other side, understanding that when you watch this team, like I had this conversation with Dominique Foxworth the other day. They've been the apple of everyone's eye because they're exciting. They can do it a bunch of different ways. The offense is dynamic. Lamar and Derrick Henry in that backfield has been everything that we hoped that it could be. But the development of Zay Flowers into a Pro Bowl wide receiver, Isaiah Likely, all that experience last year, now netting them yet another threat to go along with Mark Andrews, who after a slow start looks exactly like vintage Mark Andrews, the all-time leader in touchdown receptions in that franchise's history. And so you just look at everything they've got at their disposal. And then you look at Kansas City, who, yes, has been the standard, but we understand is less of themselves than they've usually been. And we keep wondering how many opportunities are you going to get like this with Kansas City looking the way they have the last couple of years and still managing to go out here and beat you in critical moments in the postseason.
By the way, Zay Flowers is the first Pro Bowl wide receiver in the history of the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, that's how much of a non-wide receiver team that they've been. He's the first one in the history, wide receiver from the Baltimore Ravens. I think as far as team pressure, Mike, I would look at the two teams and really just the one, Buffalo and Minnesota. Both teams 0 for the Super Bowl, right? 0 for, not 0 for 1, 0 for 2, but 0 for 4. Both of them. 0 for 4 in the Super Bowl era. Now, I wouldn't put as much pressure on Minnesota because I don't think a lot of people expected them to have the record that they have and expected them to be where they are. But Buffalo, I think the pressure is definitely on. While the Josh Allen prime years we're in them, and he's playing, MVP caliber football. It's been him and Lamar back and forth all year, and this team, I think the pressure of the city is on this football team to finally get them off to Schneid and get them a Super Bowl win. Do they have the ability to do it? Yeah, absolutely. We put Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore kind of in the grouping of the 7 in the AFC that are the 3 grouping, and then it drops down a little bit. But Buffalo certainly can do it, led by Josh Allen. So I think from a team and a city aspect, I would put Buffalo up there ahead of Minnesota because, again, I don't think the expectation was for Minnesota to be here. And all congrats to them for proving certainly me and a lot of pundits wrong in not only being in the playoffs but having 14 wins to boot. But I do think there is pressure from the city on Buffalo to get off the Schneid.
Well, I think there's pressure for a lot of people on Buffalo considering how close they've been, the captivating playoff losses that they've had in this era. Forget the history of Buffalo, but to Patrick Mahomes and company in the playoffs that we've seen with Josh Allen at the helm for this team. The difference with them, Dad, is I think looking at a team where the strength is offensive line, right? For the Buffalo Bills, that is the group that is the focus of this team. They lost the wide receiver talent. They let Steph Diggs go in the offseason here. Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, these guys that have come in and been productive around other players. Not the strength, not the sell for that team there. That feels easier for me to sell as a foundation going forward. Like what you're entering is the Josh Allen super weapon phase where, yeah, he's played statistically better quarterback before, but now he is elevating the play of those around him. He's at that point in his career where now you can trust him to do that consistently. And you've got the foundation set right in front of him in the area that's the hardest for teams to seem to manufacture. And so that's why, for them, for Philadelphia, who I could argue there's a fair amount of pressure on now because of Nick Sirianni, because the fact that during the middle of this season, we were calling for Nick Sirianni's job potentially. There were people that were asking, hey, Jalen Hurts, how good are you, actually? This passing offense took a backseat to Saquon Barkley for so much of this season, and now, thankfully, he's back at practice. We got the reports the other day.
Yeah.
To your point,
right.
He was a limited participant in practice. They said he looked sharp coming off being cleared from concussion protocol. And so I look at them and say, hey, that's eventually going to have to win them some games in a postseason. And it's amazing, Dad, how quickly the goodwill for both quarterback and head coach went out the window after the Super Bowl appearance from a couple of years ago, where Nick Sirianni led that team to a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts, in most people's estimation, outdueled Patrick Mahomes statistically in that Super Bowl. And yet now we're asking questions about both and exactly how good they are relative to their peers in the league.
Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Hurts limited at practice, but that's the last step in the 5 steps of the concussion protocol, to be on the field, have a limited or full practice, and then be cleared after that. So, and they have another, obviously, a practice today that will be measured, and I fully expect him to be out of the protocol. Would you agree? I think top to bottom, roster-wise, on paper, Philadelphia has the best team. We would have said Detroit, but Detroit's had so many injuries on defense that Philadelphia, from a roster spot on paper, has the best team in the playoffs.
Yes, I don't think that's much of a question for what they've amassed. They are healthy.
Sorry.
They are deadly on both lines of scrimmage. And I think that they've got great skill players as well on the offensive side. So, yes, I agree with you. Philadelphia's got it all laid out in front of them right now, and that's why the pressure on head coach and on quarterback going to be at an all-time high heading into this postseason. Coming up next, let's head to South Beach and check in on the status of Notre Dame and Penn State heading into tonight's game.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. In women's college basketball, USC is enjoying their first stint in the Big Ten as they spent almost a week on the East Coast. After dominating Rutgers 92-42, the Trojans handed number 8 Maryland their first loss of the season. It was their first matchup with Maryland since 1995. Juju Watkins poured in 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists, while teammate Kiki added her own 21 points and 7 rebounds en route to a 79-74 win. USC, 15-1, looks to keep momentum rolling on a great start to the season. We will keep momentum rolling when we welcome in Richard Johnson next.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. Coming up in about a half hour, DIANNA RUSSINI going to stop by, the Athletic Senior NFL Insider, to get us caught up on how serious the flirtation really was between Tom Brady, the Las Vegas Raiders, and now North Carolina Tar Heels head coach Bill Belichick, who, oh, by the way, working the portal a little bit, Bill. Going out here and stealing some guys from UConn after they go and lose to them in the bowl game. So BB already getting spicy down there in North Carolina. We'll get plenty more on that, but let's head to South Beach now. Big game coming up tonight, 7:30 Eastern, Notre Dame and Penn State in the Orange Bowl. And for more on what's going down there, we talked to Richard Johnson, 1/3 of Split Zone Duo, one of the best college football podcasts in the game. You can also read him and watch him over at CBS Sports, doing a phenomenal job. Richard, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. We're missing you down here this week. There's sunshine. There's not a lot of warmth. It's in the upper 40s this morning. Little chilly. I am still going to be able to play some golf tomorrow morning after the game. Don't you worry. We're going to get it in. But yes, I'm missing the best weather that South Florida has to offer.
That's great that you're getting golfing. That's a good man. That's a great job. Mike, I'm wondering, do you have any, as far as hard as you take these Notre Dame games being out for over a decade now, do you have PTSD with Notre Dame playing in the Orange Bowl because that's where you played your title game when you guys lost to Alabama?
You know what? I think you and Mom have a lot more PTSD with that stadium because you guys had to exist in and around it. As Richard can attest to, sometimes when you get in the mode of these games here, you black out and you kind of push everything else to the outside surroundings. So I think for me, my PTSD, I have buried all of my memories of the specifics of the Orange Bowl down deep inside me, and I'm going to keep them locked in there through the majority of game time here. But Richard, take us through some of the sights and sounds down there outside of just the weather. I know you were over watching the press conferences where James Franklin sent the shot heard around the world that had launched Notre Dame conference talk back into the ether here. What has been the tone around these two teams in the lead up to this game?
Well, first of all, I think the big thing is around the major injuries, right? Like not just Riley Mills being out for Notre Dame, but Jeremiah Love. I talked to Riley Leonard about it. How's Jeremiah moving? I tried to get Riley to dish if Jeremiah was wearing a brace or not, kind of get the status. But Riley's a pro's pro, didn't give me too much. And then Abdul Carter on the other side, obviously. Abdul Carter with the arm injury that he suffered in the Boise State Fiesta Bowl. So there's major injuries to two major players on both sides that are just interesting. I mean, it's week 19, for God's sake. So nobody's at 100%. I'm sure both you guys can attest to that when you get to this part of the season, this deep into the season. But yesterday, I'm curious about that press conference. I don't want to say spat, but that press conference interaction. I thought it was interesting because, Marcus and James are both there. And just given the nature of it, Marcus and James were both sort of asked questions in a way where it was like, can both of you answer? And so when that happens, it's funny because James is such a big personality, so gregarious, can really kind of take up the oxygen in that setting, because Marcus relatively is a little more reserved, a little more kind of like by the book, kind of keep it in between the navigational beacons kind of guy. But you could kind of see he was getting a little, like, not too much, I don't want to make too much of it, but Marcus was getting a little, like, you could see the competitor, you could see the fire in him in there. And I'm excited to see how that's going to play out tonight on the field. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be up enough to, make it hurt, so to speak. But I am interested in how much of the competitive fire burns for Marcus, given the press conference that we had yesterday.
Listen, Marcus sort of had not a lot of time for Curt Cignetti at Indiana. When Cignetti kind of started talking about how they kick everybody's ass, he didn't spend much time at midfield after whooping Indiana. So I'm with you. I think Marcus kind of bit his lip and said, you know what, we'll just have to prove it on the field. And Richard, on the field, these are two teams with great running attacks, great defenses. Should be a low-scoring affair. What do you see as the key differences that will make a difference, I should say, in this game?
Yeah, well, I don't know what the under is, but take it. Blind take it. I said that about the Georgia game, and it hit in the Georgia game too. My big thing with this is, because I think it is going to be a close game, the small things that you do in the margins to win close games I take Marcus Freeman over James Franklin. I think James Franklin and Penn State, they get too cute in these situations. Sometimes they overthink it. You saw even in the Boise game, they had a fourth down where they're running it down Boise's throat and they bring the trick play out. It's like, why are you doing that, man? Just hand it to one of those running backs, gain the first down and keep it moving. But then you see that Marcus's game management is so good. I think it's one of the best things about him. The play where they run the punt team off, run the offense on, get Georgia to draw off sides, and then are able to burn another 5 minutes. Like, things like that, situational football, it's stuff that Marcus knows really, really well. It's why I think he's kind of on the radar of some NFL teams because of his game management skills. And so that's one thing. The other thing is who's going to get the passing game going? Tyler Warren is an incredible player. You expect him to eat. But what can Penn State do besides that to get the passing game going? And then look, Notre Dame does a lot of things well, but it ain't throwing the ball. So are they going to be able to give an extra dose of Riley Leonard's legs? I know Jadarian Price is a good back, but if Jeremiah Love's 50%, 70%, we'll see. So that means you're putting the ball in Riley Leonard's hands a lot. You don't want to risk injury there. But Notre Dame's not going to throw the ball down the field. That's not their thing. So can they win this game in the complementary football fashion? I think they can. We'll see tonight.
Drew Aller's an interesting name that over the last few weeks, Richard, gotten a lot of buzz where people, especially coming off a couple of the deep passes that showed up in the Boise State game, all of a sudden the NFL scouts buzzing saying, man, if he can put a stretch run together, maybe you think about not coming back to school. Maybe you think in a weaker quarterback class coming out here. What do you see from him at this point in his quarterback development? He's approaching some all-time numbers around Penn State in terms of what he's accumulated there. But what do you see from him as a quarterback at this point in his career now through one season with Andy Kotelnicki?
I do love how Big Ten quarterbacks at some of these classic Big Ten schools, they do like the bare minimum sort of in the broader panache of the passing game, but they get all these records because, they were running retrograde single wing until like 1995. So I like Drew Aller, though. I do like Drew Aller. I like his skill set. I think he's a guy who should probably come back to school and give it another run. I don't think Penn State's going to be able to pull off in the vertical passing game what they did against Boise, which is they went over the top and they tested those Boise State corners with Mari Evans down the field. Now, they didn't hit a lot of those shots, but you could tell that they didn't really respect Boise's corners. And they said, we can get this. That ain't happening tonight. Nobody's really made Notre Dame pay for Benjamin Morrison not being part of that DB lineup because the defensive backs have stepped up for Notre Dame. So I think that Notre Dame and Penn State, they're going to kind of be mirror images on offense, honestly. Penn State will have some trick plays. They'll have some stuff that they pull out of the bag. But other than that, you're just going to see classic field position, war of attrition, defensive football. And with that, I've been really impressed with how Notre Dame has played in space and on the edge. I thought they were really fast against Georgia. I thought their DBs tackled really well. And so if you're going to have a situation where Penn State comes out and tries to spread the field, do all these kind of bells and whistles, lining up a tackle at slot, all this kind of stuff, they're going to try to isolate those perimeter defenders. And Notre Dame's been able to clean that stuff up on the edge.
And that's why Al Golden, the D coordinator, is a national treasure and needs to be hung on to as well as can be for Notre Dame. For Penn State, James Franklin trying to answer get the big win question. They haven't done it in the Big Ten, can't get past Ohio State. They haven't gotten a Big Ten title in a bit, lost that as well. If he gets this win over Notre Dame, does that start to quiet some of the critics, or does he need to do more?
No, I think if he gets this one, people settle down. Because I honestly, like Marcus needed to get that one last week against Georgia. Like Notre Dame had to get over that hump of playing a big team in a big bowl game, and they did. Classic Penn State, though. You dispatch SMU, dispatch Boise State, and now the real test is ahead of you. What happens? And that's the classic story of James Franklin, at least in the last couple of years. They beat who they're supposed to beat, which is important. It's one thing you need to do. But the second thing you need to do is beat the other good teams that are kind of in your station, that are your peers. And they haven't been able to do it the last couple of years.
So speaking of the other teams in their station here, I know, again, you're down in Miami. We're excited for the game tonight here. It's hard not to have your eye wander to the team that's going to get ready to play in the Cotton Bowl right now. Richard, if Ohio State keeps playing this way, can any of the teams left in the field beat them?
Nope. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. If you're going to have the best freshman receiver we've seen since and then you're going to have Emeka Egbuka on the other side to give you, an out pitch, so to speak, if you triple coverage Jeremiah Smith. And if Will Howard's not going to turn the ball over, because that's what's got them. That's what got him into trouble against Penn State. That's what got him into trouble, obviously, against Michigan. It's Will Howard was careless with the ball. And I think people are letting that Michigan game get too much of their mind share. If Ohio State plays in the national championship game, it will be 6 weeks between Thanksgiving weekend and the national championship game, should they be in it. They're a different team. Whatever they did in those 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and the Tennessee game, it worked. They burned that game plan clearly. They went to work on themselves. I'm sure they had plenty of self-scouting done during that time to figure out, what do we do well, what do we not do well. I've been impressed with the way they've been able to run the ball with a backup center, backup left tackle. They've been able to figure that out. They've kept Will Howard largely clean, and he hasn't made mistakes. And that's before we get to the defense, which I thought before the playoff, if they or Texas were to win the national championship, it would be on the strength of their defense, because Ohio State's defense, it's deep, it's talented. They have played a ton of football at all levels. And oh, by the way, they added probably the best defensive player in football, Caleb Downs, before this season. So you knew that Ohio State had a strong foundation on defense, but the offense just hadn't figured itself out. And then the offense figured itself out, and they go boom. And it's incredible to watch it. I mean, what they did against Oregon, when you adjust it for opponent and stage and part of the season, if you want to tell me that's the most shocking blowout you've ever seen, I mean, they're up 34-0, and you're like, it might be worse than that.
Yeah, it definitely was. Richard, only about a minute left. Of the 4 teams, is there a team and or a coach that's under the most pressure to win the title?
I think it's got to be James Franklin, to be honest with you. James Franklin is under the most pressure to win a title here. I know people think it might be Ryan Day, but I don't. I don't think Ryan Day I didn't buy that he was going to get fired if they lost to Tennessee. I don't buy, you've seen what this team is. I think it's James Franklin, because for James Franklin, this Penn State team, you have been unable to get over the hump in this specific stage against a team like Notre Dame so many times over the last couple of years. Can you do it tonight?
And we were going to find out 7:30 Eastern tonight. Will James Franklin move on and get that opportunity, or can the Fighting Irish continue? It's been a special run post Northern Illinois. At RJ_CFB on Twitter is where you can find him. And again, Split Zone Duel, one of my favorite podcasts. You can see him all over CBS Sports. Richard, we appreciate the time, man. Hit him straight tomorrow, one way or the other.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, Dad, that's interesting. And I mean, I think he is right? Ryan Day, I think that situation, we all as a collective sports media probably got a little too far over our skis in terms of the way we talked about his job security at that place versus some of his counterparts here. Still accomplished a lot. And as Richard pointed out, this looks like a team that could very likely get him that national championship he's been searching for.
Yeah, I agree. Again, there's pressure on all these teams. They all want to win. But as far as this game, Mike, I really look at the backfields of Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, Katron Allen, and Nicholas Singleton as being the keys, because you're going to need both, I think, both of them in each backfield against these tough defenses. The difference, Riley Leonard in his running, but he needs those other backs to be the threat of running to continue to run those quarterback powers. So I think, again, Riley Leonard's the difference in this game.
Yeah, it's, man, that guy's got to be so tired. I saw Riley did the aw shucks thing where he's like, I don't know how people keep not tackling me here. I don't have great juke moves. I'm not super fast. It's like, buddy, I hate to break it to you. You're fast as hell, and there ain't nothing sneaky about it. Coming up next, we'll hear from a college basketball coach who had a lot to say about his team next.
we're soft. So don't tell me you want to win. Like, just don't tell me you want to win. So don't tell me you want to win. It's crazy, you know, and it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches and my players. I mean, I don't need to do anything else. I almost got 500 wins. I'm only 53. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. But yet I come in and I have more passion and energy and pride than everybody in. That's the problem. So what the truth of it is, Ben, it's really hard to coach people that are delusional. The hungry dog gets the bone. We got guys that think they're way better than they are. They're nice kids. They're completely delusional about who they are.
I mean, it's really hard to coach people that are delusional. Has me weak in the knees. That was just one of the hardest insults I've heard so far. That was UCLA head coach Mick Cronin after his team suffered a blowout loss to Michigan. He did not mince his words, fellas, as you just saw there. But what do we think of him being so blunt in the press conference? Because at this point, it's like, do you lose the locker room here? Is this going to hurt recruiting? I mean, what do we think?
So UCLA currently in their first season of Big Ten play, they are 2-2. And Dad, Mick Cronin, we know, is a guy that is not shy about voicing how he feels. So this isn't totally out of left field with him. And the recruiting elements of it here, I don't know if I'm willing to go that far reaching, but man, in general, like, I understand that this is probably born out of a frustration that has been expressed behind closed doors. As we often talk about, when things make their way out, a lot of times it's because the message clearly isn't getting behind closed doors. And to call your team Delulu in public reeks of a certain kind of frustration. But, man, I'm just never going to be a total fan of all the I, me, my that went on in that one here. That's not the brand of leadership that I ascribe to. And listen, to Mick Cronin's point, he has been tremendously successful. There's no arguing that to an extent the way he does things works. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. He could be right. He could be coaching a team full of players that are difficult to reach in modern college football. But I come from a world where you're either coaching that or you're allowing it to happen. And so to try and distance yourself from that publicly and say, this is not a me problem, this is a y'all problem, seems like a wild way to try and address this, no matter what the reality of the situation is.
Yeah, there's one thing to doing that behind closed doors. It's another thing to do it publicly. And the delusional part, while you don't hear it that much, still the part that gets me, and I think it would get any athlete, is being called soft. And that is now. This was after they lost by 19 to Michigan, where Vlad Golden, the 7'1", 250-pounder for Michigan, just pulverized him for 36 points. Actually, UCLA made a run in the beginning of the second half and took the lead before Michigan overtook them. I just can't get over the being called soft part. That would anger me so much. But to your point, listen, Mick's been around, as he said, he's only in his 50s, but he's been around. He's got a lot of wins, as he let you know. It did seem odd. It did seem odd that he would air his team out publicly like that.
I mean, I don't think it's advisable. I think that's poor leadership. And I get that maybe you feel like there's no other recourse, but man, that's on you. Like, if your team is not responding in all these different ways, they are a reflection of you. And so you can say, hey, I come with energy, I do all that. Clearly you're not reaching them. And so either you have recruited and brought in people that do not fit the program that you're trying to run, or you're just not finding a way to connect with this certain group. Like, again, I'm sorry, these coaches are paid a lot of money and given the opportunity. It is your job to go out there and do it. And I get all the things. Like, again, there could be a reality to a situation where coaching modern athletes could be a different animal. I'm not in these locker rooms with current players, but we all see and hear it talked about. The different attention spans here, the different goals, NIL putting money in players' pockets that creates a different attitude or dynamic that's ever existed before. I get all that, but sitting here and say, I don't got to do this, I have the most energy, dogging out his coaches like that, Dad, just does not seem like a way to endear yourself to the locker room. Maybe he doesn't care anymore. Maybe this locker room in his mind is so broken. This is not an area he's concerned about endearing himself with. But this early in the season, like, that's how you get a mutiny on your hands inside a locker room, talking about people like that publicly there. That's not going to make you want to go play harder for a coach. I get tough love. I've been coached tough. Like, that's not an issue that we're talking about here. But this just seems counterproductive. I don't know what the goal is here other than a coach very emotionally venting his frustrations publicly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're what, 11-4. They're ranked in the top 25. They are 2-2 in the conference and making the move to the Big Ten. You just wonder if tough coaching, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but if it works in today, and I'm not calling today's players softer, it's just a different era. It's just a difference in how players were coached years ago to how they're coached now. And a lot of that has to do with the portal and NIL. And I'm not ripping the portal and NIL. I'm glad the players have a choice, but it does change the dynamics. And our coaches who coach hard, will they keep coaching hard knowing you may lose players and just say, well, I'll be damned, this is the way I'm going to do it? Or do you kind of change your ways? We've seen coaches get out of it. You know, Larinaga from the Miami, basketball, Nick Saban from Alabama football. They just and others. They just didn't like how the transition of the game today and the athletes and the rights and the freedoms that they have. It has changed the way a coach normally needs to coach and approach his players, and some coaches don't want to. And maybe they'll still coach fine and get away with it by not coaching because they're going to be hard-headed and say, this is the way I coach, this is the way I'm going to coach. But you wonder if you have to kind of meet in the middle with today's circumstances.
I get it, but man, there's just like the number one love language of athletics and really life in general is accountability, right? Leadership in any organization, when your constituents see you take accountability, it makes it easier for everybody else to say, all right, I am going to be accountable for my portion of this operation. And what about that looked like a message of accountability if that's what you're trying to instill? Toughness, all those different things come from being accountable to your teammates. And Mick Cronin basically just said, this is a y'all problem. I am not doing anything wrong here. Dad, the tenor of this would have been entirely different. You can go out there and call your team soft if they're soft and you're trying to send a message, but then say, hey, that ultimately starts with me. I have to find a way as the head coach to go out and do that. I cannot remember a lot of instances of seeing a leader of a team come out and publicly say, I'm doing everything I need to do. Y'all just aren't doing what you have to do here, and try and have that be a message that works. That's the part that just doesn't compute in my brain on this. And someone that spends more time around college basketball, you could tell me if Mick's done this before at other areas he's been, like specifically this, because this is a brand of leadership that I just have not seen work for a lot of people anywhere. And again, he's won a lot of games here, but sitting up and saying, I'm doing fine, you guys are not doing good, is kind of a weird way to pursue and then exemplify accountability inside of an organization when you display none of it in front of the microphone.
So, you know, you're pushing halfway or so close to it through the season. You wonder what the locker room, the players in the locker room, you wonder what their discussions are. You wonder what their conversations are. You know, do they, and it would go by the leaders of the team, right? The leaders of how they express themselves. If they are showing animosity toward what the coach says, that's going to trickle on down to the rest of the team. So it'll be interesting because I agree. I do not like that leadership approach by Cronin at all. But now it's going to be, how do the players react? And that's ultimately what Mick Cronin is looking for, right? He's looking, this is his coaching. Again, I don't know if he's done this before or if he's just unbelievably frustrated, but he said what he said. So it's out there. So now it's going to be, how do the players react to it? How do they come out, you know, at the next practice, which I'm sure they were already had, or meetings or whatever. How do they respond? Do they, you know, say, okay, coach is right, we need to have some drive, some mental fortitude, or are they just all griping about what the coach says? So that's when Mick knows what he's doing, right? All head coaches know what they're doing when they're getting in front of the microphone. At least you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're doing.
I feel like we ascribe a lot of credit to guys in spots where they don't always. Again, Mick has earned the benefit of the doubt with the wins, but even if it works, I guess I'm still saying this is not, in my vision, advisable leadership tactics.
No.
Like the response could be, hey, forget him, we'll do this for us, could be a response. And maybe he's gamed out for that. Maybe he's fine making himself the bad guy in his own locker room, but I don't see a world where that is something that is all of a sudden going to inspire your team, unless you know him, and I mean, you really know your guys enough to say, hey, alienating myself from them is going to be the thing that gets to them. Then congratulations. I want to read the book that comes off that of leadership tactics and the mental warfare inside a locker room, because again, I don't understand how the response there is supposed to be something you game out and say, oh, that's going to be good.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, but he did it. It's out there in the ether now. So now it's done. It's over. You know, now it has to be, how do the players react to it? Because it is out there. They have a good season going, not a great season, but a good season going. They still have a lot of ball left. So how do they react? That's going to be the key to that. And quite honestly, how do the assistant coaches, what are they talking about amongst themselves as well? Because they got thrown under the bus. Everyone got thrown under the bus. And normally when you throw everybody under the bus as a head coach, you include yourself. You're laying down there under the bus as well. But Mick wasn't laying down under the bus. Mick was basically driving the bus over his assistants and over his players. So those are two separate entities that talk amongst themselves that have to decide which way they're going to go.
It's so interesting because as we get ready for a world, and we mentioned it before, where Bill Belichick is coming back to college coaching, one of the ultimate in terms of not giving the outside any of the fodder like this, but also extreme accountability on the inside, right? So much so that the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady eventually by the end was like, I'm sick of getting chirped by this dude in front of meetings when I feel like I've done a lot for this football team here. Like, that's the version of it, Dad, when we talk about all this, because to Mick's credit, he didn't bring up the transfer portal. He didn't bring up name, image, and likeness, at least in the clips that I saw of this and the multiple I watched. He didn't bring those up as reasons why, oh, this is the corrosive foundation of college athletics that we're currently sitting in right now. He just talked about his team specifically and their response in that game here. But we are getting ready to see a really interesting blend of flavors with Bill Belichick going back to college at a time where maybe it is a lot different. He probably even felt and saw that at the end of the NFL, and what kind of response we are going to see there from him in terms of, hey, I am now in waters that are entirely different. I've never swam in these college football waters myself as a head coach, and I'm coming at a time where everybody else, all of my peers age-wise, are saying, hey man, it's different, you're not going to like all this stuff. I'm fascinated to watch through that lens of what this is going to look like with this kind of stuff in mind.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously he's dealing with now 18 to 22-year-olds, though it can be now 24 and 25-year-olds, as we're seeing
He's
in
experienced
college.
with that
I have
too,
no doubt.
So.
I have no doubt he's going to do what he said and prepare them for the NFL, and that's what kids want to hear. But I wonder how he'll be in front of the media dealing with now young adults as opposed to guys who it's their profession to play football, even though college basketball and football are as close to pro now as ever. I just wonder how he'll deal with the media, how he'll talk to the media in regards to how he did it in New England. Where did we already get the best of Bill Belichick in his introductory press conference, where there was some smiling, a little bit of joking around? Are we going to get more of that because it's a college atmosphere, or is it going to revert back to Bill controlling obviously everything?
I'm so scared for the college reporters.
I can tell you what
yeah.
I fear for them.
The student reporter.
Yeah.
I can tell you what they're not going to get are quotes where he calls his entire team soft and says, I don't need to be here. Because again, I don't know how advisable that would ever be, and I don't know what that locker. I'm going to be fascinated to watch this. I may actually watch UCLA basketball now going forward this season, just because I want to see what kind of attitude comes out of the locker room after your head coach says that publicly about you, your entire team, and your coaching staff in the middle of this season here. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off here. But speaking of Bill Belichick and others, been a lot of news going around the NFL circles in the last couple of days, including some whispers that Tom Brady may have put in the call that very few expected to his old counterpart in Bill Belichick to inquire about what's going on in Las Vegas. We will talk to the Athletics NFL insider DIANNA Russini about that and more coming up next on GoJo Golic. Bill Belichick has no plans to return to the NFL per DIANNA Russini. That dropped yesterday here as the Athletic senior NFL insider continues to make the rounds here, Dad, around the coaching carousel in the NFL. And I thought that was interesting, seeing some of the reports pop up, as we've heard Tom Brady, as one of the minority owners of the Las Vegas Raiders, was going to have a role in figuring out who the next head coach is going to be after they fired Antonio. And everyone just kind of assumed, oh, Mike Vrabel, who's the guy that's oft talked about in the coaching cycle right now, it'd be his old buddy Mike Vrabel. But to hear that there was potentially a call put out to Bill Belichick, how much did that surprise you given how things ended with Tom and Bill?
It didn't really surprise me. What would have been the norm for me would have been Bill saying, I'll think about it if you come back and play quarterback for at least a year and bridge to the next quarterback, which then obviously Tom would have to give up his ownership shares to do that. You know why I think maybe Tom would want to do it? Because then Tom would be Bill's boss instead of Bill being Tom's boss. So maybe there was a little role reversal in there saying, hey, I now call the shots, buddy.
I'm actually going to interview you. It's sometimes a helpful exercise here, but no, you know what? It's an interesting way to think about it given the nature of their relationship over the years. And listen, for the Las Vegas Raiders, would have been a coup. And this is kind of always the fear, Dad, I'm sure, for North Carolina fans deep down in places they don't talk about at parties. All the buyout language we've talked about where it drops to $1 million after June from the $10 million it currently sits at probably at least represented some of that. Now, seeing him publicly rebuff that in the ways that we've heard here would go a long way. If you're Bill Belichick and continuing to bolster what you're doing right now, the negative recruiting that you're probably going to encounter from other teams pointing out, hey, this is a guy that everyone thinks wants to go back into the NFL. There's no way he's going to be here to coach you all that long. This is a big feather in his cap now to be able to take this to prospective recruits and to people that might say that about North Carolina and be like, listen, the guy I won all those Super Bowl wins just asked me to come back and coach, and I told him no. I'm going to be here for you and your kid as I sit in the living room.
Yeah, and also, in all honesty, Mike, I just don't think there was a place for Bill in the NFL. You know, of the 6 slots, he wasn't going to the Jets. He wasn't going back to New England. There's New Orleans, Chicago, Jacksonville, Las Vegas. I think there's just too many young coaches that are going to get a chance. And you know Vrabel is going to get a chance. And Vrabel would get hired before Bill Belichick gets hired. I know Bill is 15 wins away from breaking the record, but Vrabel and Ben Johnson are the 2 hottest candidates out there. And I honestly don't know if there would be a team that would hire Bill outside of maybe Tom Brady, if Tom Brady tried to talk him into coming to it. I don't know if there's a team.
I mean, Dad, the Las Vegas Raiders actually seem like the perfect team there. Get a guy in Bill Belichick to come out there and be a face of a team that does not have one right now. You sell to Max Crosby, your franchise player. Hey, here's a plan for victory. The guy who's been the greatest architect for winning in the modern era. Yeah, Tom Telesco, who's there as the GM there, I'm sure that would neuter some of his power, but that's a thing I'd have to imagine that they'd be pretty comfortable with. And really, that job, as far as attractiveness, knowing, hey, you don't have a quarterback on the roster right now, and it could be a struggle going forward, I just struggle to see how it's a job that's overly sexy to a lot of other candidates here. For more on that situation, DIANNA Russini joins us now. She has battled against the internet, and she has won here. DIANNA, good morning. How you doing, buddy?
To be kicked off this show. No!
Never.
Oh, no.
Never. We got you.
You got me. Okay, good. Hi, guys. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what's going on today, but I've had this black cloud of bad technology going for 6 months. And if anyone knows how to fix anything technologically, call me because I could use some help. So obviously busy time of year right now with the coaching cycle going on. I actually think that's probably the reason. I think the phone has just been a little too overheated lately with all the chatter and gossip going around. So where do you guys want to start?
Well, let's start with Bill Belichick. You reported yesterday that he was not going to go and coach the Las Vegas Raiders. We had heard there maybe had been some interest from Tom Brady there. How real was that? How far down the road did that potentially get between Bill and his old counterpart in Tom Brady?
Yeah, so from what I understand, this was a lot of just conversation about what Brady should be looking for in terms of building a program, what type of coach he wants to have in place. It was picking the brain of a man that he's known for as long as he has and has had as much success as he possibly could probably have, to just try to help navigate the way and how to go about doing this the way that they want to do it. So do I think the conversation of, hey, would you want to come hang out and maybe be the head coach of the Raiders popped up? I'm sure they danced around it a bit. But from what I understand, Bill is really committed to staying in the college game, being at UNC. And I did have a few people after I put out that report say, Belichick really wanted to be in the NFL. He may say no right now on January 9th, but January 10th, he could change his mind. And look, we all know things change, and I don't think we would be shocked if something crazy changed, but I do feel really good at this moment that Belichick really wants to stick with college, and Brady has a plan. He has a plan with the Raiders, with Mark Davis, and what they want to do there, and they're working on that right now.
Well, while Bill is committed to North Carolina, we know Ben Johnson last year stayed committed to Detroit, even though he had opportunities. He's going to have many opportunities again this year. Do you think this is the year he actually, no matter where Detroit finishes, even if they don't win a Super Bowl, do you think Ben Johnson is gone?
I don't. And I'm glad you're bringing that up, Mike, because I think he's taking more interviews than I expected. Let me start there. I really thought he would only take 2. I figured it would be the Bears and the Patriots. But now I see that he's taking one with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's taking one with the Raiders. And obviously that Brady effect, I'm sure, had something to do with it. The influence that Tom is having on that decision-making probably kept Ben open-minded to, let me just listen. Let me just hear what their plans are. But I still think Ben is approaching this the way he did the last few seasons, which is this has to be a setup and a structure that allows me to do the things I want to do, that allows me to be the play caller, and sort of run my team the way you see like a Sean McVay run it, a Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell. Way they are saying who the manager is going to be. So it's, the New York Jets are not on the board for him. The New Orleans Saints are not on the board for him at this moment. But I do think the Chicago Bears are very much trying to get this done. They really want to see if Ben Johnson's the right fit for them. So he'll meet with them. And look, Mike, I think there's still a chance that we're talking in a month and we say, Ben Johnson stayed at Detroit. I still think it's on the table. I think he's going to be very particular with the gig he takes.
Would be incredible to see. Dianna, only about a minute to 30 seconds left here, but I saw in your reporting, how real is the chance that Steve Spagnuolo could actually get head coaching interviews and take a job elsewhere outside of Kansas City?
Real. I think it's very real. There's no reason for teams to put in for him if they don't think that he's got that ability. And I can tell you from covering Spags as much as I have, it's funny, you're around the Kansas City Chiefs tons when you cover the NFL because they win so much. So you're with them all the time in the postseason. And Spags is always very focused on the challenge at hand, the game in front of him. But he really wants to be a head coach. Like, this is something he wants to do. He's ready for this. And I know that there are teams that believe that Steve Spagnuolo is ready to do it too. So I would say that Steve has a really good shot at getting one of these jobs.
Wow, it would be amazing. That's something we talk about every year, much like Ben Johnson, how fortunate the Chiefs are to continue to retain him year after year as they go for the three-peat again. Now, Dianna, thank you for battling through the technology day. We appreciate you, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon, all right?
All right. Thank you for your patience. Thanks to the listeners. Appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dianna.
At DM Russini on Twitter, where you can get all the latest updates and great NFL news. Read her and check her out over at The Athletic, one of the co-hosts of the Scoop City podcast there as well. Coming up next, we'll finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third here on GoJo and Golic. All right, let's wrap up the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the show. Go and subscribe to the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel. Do it. It's awesome. At GoJo and Golic on YouTube. Hit the bell so you know when we go live in the morning. We post all of our interviews with some of our great guests there. The live version of the show. Plenty of shorts and more coming up in the coming months here as we close out the end of the NFL and college football seasons. Get on into the NBA. Don't miss it. Head over there. Thank you to our guest that came by today, Richard Johnson from CBS Sports and Split Zone Duo, great college football analyst, and DIANNA Russini, the Athletics NFL insider, for stopping by and getting us caught up on some great news and notes. If you missed either of those, check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Guys, let's start off with this. The NHL, obviously well known for the Winter Classic at this point, playing outdoor stadium series games in other environments here, is going for its boldest version of this yet here. The NHL announced that next year's Winter Classic will be at Miami's Lone Depot Park, and a stadium series at the Bucks' Raymond James Stadium in Tampa also set to be announced now. So, Dad, how do we feel about hockey played outdoors in Florida?
Well, I mean, I listen, I love the Winter Series. I love when it's outdoor. Notre Dame had the Blackhawks play one year at Notre Dame Stadium. It was fantastic. It's very, very cool. But you have to wonder about, there's a difference of playing in South Bend, Indiana in winter outside as opposed to Miami or Tampa Bay, where Miami, I just looked, and today it's going to be 67 degrees of where the open air, warmer air is hitting the ice. You know, and what obviously modern technology helps with keeping the ice cold outdoors, but still, this is a warmer temperature to keep frozen ice. So, you know, what's the melting procedure? What does it do to the skating and the puck and everything like that?
Yeah, like maybe I'm a real dumbass, but I don't understand how this works. How do you keep the ice frozen?
So I didn't realize they've been doing this for 18 years now, the Winter Classic games outdoors, and they have gone to Raleigh, Dallas, Nashville, Santa Clara in California before and done these. So it's not totally unprecedented, even if the level of humidity down in Miami. The league said they're going to install a temporary climate-controlled structure within Raymond James Stadium that will house the rink during its construction. The roof at Lone Depot Park is going to be closed while that rink is built. But both games will be outdoors in temperatures that could be over 70 degrees. So there's certainly going to still be some challenges that come with that. There's no doubt. But at the very least, they've done similar things like this before. That's just going to be wild. Usually we associate the Winter Classic with great scenes of snow falling around during these games. And you've got those. Seeing like palm trees and sunshine and people in bathing suits in the background is going to be a wild juxtaposition as we do that hockey.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
I think it is too. I like the fact that they barnstorm it, that they move it around. I think it's great to have all. But you're right. The norm is to see a light snowfall, you know, and cold weather. They're playing a cold weather game in hockey. But as long as they can control it, I mean, again, the humidity in Florida is certainly a difference. Though in Carolina, there would be some humidity as well on what it would do to the ice and what it would do to the skating for the safety of the players. But I think it's great that they move it around. I love the Winter Classic.
Oh, it's going to be so hot for the players.
I am just excited. I am just excited to see hockey the way Jesus intended, with a giant pirate ship in the background of it and cannon fire at Raymond James Stadium. Jesse, let's move on to that. What do we got?
Yeah, so apparently the internet tells you that every man dreams of having a man cave. Is that still really a thing these days? Apparently it is. We have this video from Twitter where a woman is apparently trying to find her husband's hidden man cave. I don't know. If I had to guess, she's trying to find the door to the man cave. But basically, you have a facade here, a stone facade, and she has to like find the loose rock and enter a code to enter into the man cave. And then here she goes inside, and there's like it looks like a home theater situation. Like maybe there's a pool table in there. And yeah, I mean, pretty cool, but I don't buy for a second that she didn't know there was a man cave being built in her backyard.
Yeah, I don't really buy anything about it other than this is a video to show the man cave, and they just needed a clever caption that was going to make the rounds on the internet. So good job by them in copywriting. But, Dad, for me, I am just a big fan of hidden rooms in general. My dream in life is to have a bookcase where you pull a book and then it opens up. It doesn't have to be a man cave or anything. Like, I think man cave is just proxy for a fun, relaxing room that's got TVs. I know in the past some guys have like, oh, I need this spot to hide out and get away from my wife and all that stuff. But I just think the idea of having a secret room that you can access by some sort of lever, to me, would be the height of wealth and power.
So there's this club in Boston where there's a statue head, and you pull the statue head forward, and a door opens, and there's a secret room in there.
That's like the old Batman
Cool.
TV show from decades ago, where you pulled the head of a sculpture down and then opened the door to the Batcave. I don't believe for an instant that she didn't know where the door was or the man cave. This was just a way to get it on video, and it's a cool man cave hidden in a facade, a stone facade. Mike, I want to know why you changed your voice when you talked about guy having a man cave. Why you changed your voice like that? What was the reason for that?
Because I'm doing stereotypical knuckle dragging man. That's the
old ball and chain, you know? Like,
gotta get away from the old ball and chain with a man cave.
Get back in the kitchen, make me a sandwich.
Leaning into the bit.
Yeah.
I apologize for the
allowed.
connotation that is vaguely Southern. That is merely just the voice I adopt there. But to Jesse's point, though, I actually have one experience with a place that also did this in terms of having a weird entrance. There's a place called Break Room 86 in Los Angeles. I went there on a date, and when you go up there, you go through this back alley into this hallway, and they've got a candy machine there. And the person who leads you back there, it's like a little bar lounge where they play some music, and the person in the back asks you which of the candies that you want, and then they press the button on there and open the door, and then you go inside. And I remember sitting there like, so do we not get the candy? Like, you can't advertise the candy as the means to get in here and then not give me the candy on the back end. That seems wrong.
Yeah, that's cruel.
That is, you should get the candy and the secret entrance. But overall, I'm with you. I'm with you, Mike. I do love a secret entrance too. And again, it's just called a man cave, but any kind of room where you can just chill out, which has a secret passage, is cool by me.
Yeah, that's sick.
I know Elmo was doing his ins and out list for 2025. I feel like secret rooms at more establishments needs to be in 2025. Jesse, you know what else is probably in 2025? Still definitely cruises. Let's get to the third.
Ooh, I am out on cruises, but they are in for a lot of people, including this guy who had a bit of a surprise on his cruise. So there's this video. It happened on a Carnival cruise. This man opens his door, and there's just a flock of birds. They look kind of like parrots to me, like not the big parrots. They look like tropical birds. They're green. I think they're green. This looks like a scene out of Harry Potter. I don't know, like who summoned these birds to his room? If he's out at sea, how did they get to the ship? I don't know. Clearly the moral of this story is, number one, don't go on cruises. Number two, don't leave your balcony door open if you are on a cruise.
Well, I was going to say, Dad, I wondered what the advice was going on to this cruise ship, if they were warned about this. Because remember, we went on a family vacation to Africa, and the resort we were staying at said, do not leave your windows unlocked at night. The monkeys will come inside. Like, they are out there, they are mischievous, and if you do not lock your doors and windows at night, you're going to wake up with monkeys in your room. So I do wonder if they were warned about this on the cruise ship.
Yeah, you wonder if this is where the cruise ship was docked and they were on land for a day and then came back. Either way, the amount of birds in that room, which leads to kind of the birds freaking out. And what do birds do when they freak out? They poop. So the amount of poop, bird poop in that room had to be just horrific. I mean, I'm with you, Jesse. I'm out on cruises to begin with. That would just seal the deal if I opened the door and there were a bunch of birds dumping in my room.
It's also like anything for the Instagram video, I guess, because they opened the door. The birds were flying out into the hallway. Like, all right, see you later.
That is true. If I'm another cruise goer, I'm pissed. If I open my door at the wrong time and because you were trying to get it off for the gram, now all of a sudden I got to worry about the bird in my room. You got to keep the birds contained. That's a you problem right now, not an us problem, hopefully for everyone there. My fondest cruise memories is the fact that on every floor of the cruise that we went on, you could find ice cream at the end of it, and apparently the ice cream was free as a part of the tickets that you came there with. So young Fat Mike was very excited about that. Old Fat Mike just wants you to download, subscribe, rate, review the show, leave it a 5-star rating, and watch us live at 8 to 10 Eastern. Thanks so much. Enjoy the game tonight. Go Irish.
Oh, God.